Hey, I heard that you have debts, is that true? Huh? Debts? Why are you asking that? I just want to know if it's true or not. Can you clarify? When I asked about the debts, my husband's expression changed instantly. This was because my father-in-law had asked him to pay for my mother-in-law's hospital bills, and my husband had told him that he couldn't because he was in debt. I hadn't heard such a story, and I confronted my husband when he came home. Who told you that? Besides, it's none of your business since it's not bothering you. Who do you think you are, being a woman and all? I don't understand why you're angry. Because you're being persistent. When will you understand your place? You're being supported by me, so stop complaining. So, that was his mindset. But I've completely gotten over it. Perfect timing. I've decided to leave him. I can't be happy with someone like this, and I don't want to ruin my life any further. Shortly after, I moved into a condo in a prime location, taking advantage of my husband being at work to complete the move. That night. Hello? Where are you at this time? Why haven't you done the housework or prepared dinner? I received an angry call from my husband, who knew nothing. Of course, I hadn't told him anything, so I assumed he would be very angry. But this was expected. From now on, I'll be living alone. I've left the divorce papers on the table for you to check. I said that and he hung up in a fit of anger, but the divorce was successfully completed. A week went by without any contact from my husband. Hello. I need to talk, come home. What? I have nothing to talk about with you and I don't want to come. If you have something to say, can't you just call? It's important. What do you mean you've been paying for my mom's hospital bills? My name is Michelle, and I am currently working as a designer. I started working at a design company after graduating from a technical school, and now I am an independent freelance designer. Of course, it took quite some time to start getting work as a freelance designer, but now I am able to earn a decent income. Where would you like to go for our honeymoon? Well, you're busy with work, and I've been busy lately too. Maybe a domestic trip would be good. I'd like to go to the spa. I like spa too, so that might be good. We met through work and got married after dating for 6 months. I was already receiving work as a designer at the time, and I was in the midst of marital bliss. All right, I'm off, so please make meatloaf for dinner today. Also, please prepare 3 side dishes like a course meal. Got it, have a good day at work. I often worked from home, so I was generally in charge of all the household chores and meals. I had no complaints about that, but I soon started to feel my husband's selfishness after getting married. No matter how busy I was, the lunchbox had to have more than 5 items, and leftovers or frozen food were prohibited. Maybe he's just particular about food. But even on days when I'm busy with work, it became painful to meet such demands. However, I didn't want to worsen our relationship over such small issues, so I never really complained. A year flew by quickly, and our relationship stabilized significantly. We got along well with his parents, who came to visit us almost monthly. It's been a year since you got married, but is everything going well? If you have any complaints, feel free to speak up anytime. I don't have any particular complaints, so everything is fine. He's always been a bit selfish. I was worried whether he could handle marriage well, but remember, we are always on your side, Michelle, so contact us if anything comes up. The in-laws were generally on my side, so I had no complaints about that. Certainly, to say that I have no dissatisfaction with my married life with my husband would be a lie. However, I knew I could consult his parents if anything happened, and they would help me. Because I felt this way, I could live without overthinking too much. As we were approaching the 3rd year of our marriage. I'll be late today as well, so I don't need dinner. What? You're going to be late again? You said you wanted beef stew, so I started preparing it this afternoon. If you were going to be late, you could have told me earlier. If it's being late due to work, I don't think he could contact me much earlier. But lately, despite making dinner as requested, he often doesn't come home until late at night, and my frustration had been building. Having worked in a company myself, I understand that unexpected overtime happens. So I don't intend to blame him for that. Even though I understand it's difficult to contact me earlier, I couldn't reconcile my feelings. I wish he would consider my efforts a bit more. I'm busy with my work as a designer and doing household chores. In between that time, I had been preparing the beef stew since the afternoon. Even if he was going to be late, he could at least say sorry. That's what I thought. However, the words that came out of my husband's mouth were the kind that made me feel even worse. Can't help it, right? It was decided suddenly that we're going out for drinks. Going for drinks? Wait a minute. I understand if it's overtime at work, but going for drinks. You're prioritizing alcohol over family? It's not a big deal, right? I don't go every day, and I need to unwind occasionally. It's fine if it's an occasional break. I don't want to restrict my husband's actions that much, nor do I intend to. However, this time it's different. He had me make a complicated dish, and then he comes up with such a selfish story. Isn't that too selfish? If you were going to go drinking, you could at least think a little about my feelings. I wouldn't have made such an effort with the cooking. You could try to understand how I feel, being stressed from work. Besides, it takes guts for a woman to stand up to a man like me. There it is. If we start this conversation, it's the end. He looks down on me just because he's a man. If you ask me, what does being a man have to do with anything? That doesn't matter. We're a married couple, there's no such thing as one being above the other. If my husband paid all the living expenses and did the household chores, then it would be strange for me to complain. However, I handle all the housework and meals, and I contribute to the living expenses as well. Still, how can he afford to be so condescending? Maybe he has always been a domineering type, but I have my limits of patience. I'm making an effort for my husband without having much free time for myself, and it's unbearable if he just does whatever he wants. It's not just about you all the time, think about me a little too. Thinking that continuing the conversation with my husband would only lead to an argument, I immediately hung up the phone. Of course, even if we had an argument, I wouldn't think I was in the wrong, but I wished he would cool down and think a bit. To consider the feelings of others a little more instead of looking down on people. However, there was no improvement in my husband's attitude afterward, and it only got worse. Hey, you put leftovers in today's lunch, didn't you? Yes, but it can't be helped, right? You went to the drinking party on your own yesterday, and dinner was left over. Putting that in the lunchbox, what are you thinking? I've explained many times that it's disrespectful to the master of the house. How many times do I have to tell you? Don't you think it's rude to go out drinking without thinking, when someone has been preparing dinner and waiting for you? How can you manage as a working adult if you can't even understand such a simple thing? Normally, I wouldn't say this much, but lately, even small things my husband does have started to irritate me. He doesn't correct his behavior when I point it out, perhaps thinking the world revolves around him. And there was no place to release my stress. Until now, I could have talked to my husband's parents if something happened, but recently, my mother-in-law fell ill and we haven't seen much of each other. It doesn't seem to be life-threatening, but having no one to consult with made my stress reach its peak. One day, while I was doing the usual housework, my father-in-law called. I'm sorry to contact you suddenly. Can we meet now? Is that okay? I'm free now, but what's happened? I need to talk about something regarding my wife. Can I come over to your house? With mother-in-law's condition, I'll come to you. I'll prepare and leave, and I should be there in about an hour. I said that and hung up the phone. But what could have happened regarding my mother-in-law? I knew she was unwell, but could it be because of that? Worried about her, I quickly headed to my father-in-law's place. "I'm sorry to have you come all this way." "That's okay, but what's happened?" "Actually, my wife needs to be hospitalized." I suspected as much, but I didn't expect her condition had worsened that much. Until now, it was enough to manage with medicine and outpatient visits, but now she needed to be hospitalized. According to my father-in-law, it's not life-threatening yet, but it was quite a shock. "So, I'm really sorry to ask you, Michelle, but could you help with the hospital expenses?" The thing is, that foolish son of mine has debts, so I couldn't ask him. If my in-laws were in financial trouble, I was willing to help as much as possible. However, this was the first I heard of my husband's debts. I had never heard of any debts before, nor had he shown any signs. Whether these debts were from before our marriage, after, or what they were for, I had no idea. I was surprised and angry, but getting angry at my father-in-law was pointless. "I've never heard about any debts. What do you mean by this?" "That too, we only found out about it recently. It seems he has been spending it on cars and nightclubs." "Is this a recent thing?" "I thought he had the car before we got married." "I don't know when exactly, but when I talked to him about the hospital expenses recently, he said it was impossible because of his debts." I believed my father-in-law was telling me everything he knew. I didn't intend to press him further. But I couldn't help being furious. If it was debt incurred before marriage, he should have discussed it before we married. That's common sense. If it was after we got married, why did he do it without any consultation? And nightclubs. That's not something you go into debt for. If the debt was incurred due to an accident or illness, something necessary, I could understand. But if not, it's just wasteful debt. Since becoming freelance, I've managed our finances carefully, which is why I was so upset about my husband's actions. Of course, if you can't help, I wouldn't blame you at all. I don't intend to say no. I'll provide financial help as much as I can. But could you keep this between us, without telling my husband? Huh? He basically needs to be the most important person, so I think it's better not to tell him. This was my utmost consideration. While the debt issue was concerning, I didn't want to exacerbate the problem. My mother-in-law was ill, and my father-in-law was also suffering mentally. When I heard that our son had caused another problem with Michelle, I thought it would only add more stress to both of them. I believe I need to have a serious conversation with my husband, but for now, I've decided to prioritize my in-laws' well-being. Then, about 4 months later, a day came when I finally heard that my mother-in-law would be discharged from the hospital. I decided to confront my husband about the debt. "Hey, I heard you have debts, is that true?" "Huh? Debts? Why are you asking that?" "Why? I just want to know if it's true or not." "Can you clarify?" When I asked about the debts, my husband's expression changed dramatically. Of course, I didn't think my father-in-law was lying, so I wasn't surprised by my husband's reaction. However, I wasn't informed about how much he owed or where the debts were from. "Who told you that?" "That's not important. What matters is, are you really in debt?" "After all the big talk you've been making, what was that all about?" I could tell from his demeanor that the debts were real, but his defensive reaction didn't make me feel any better. The one who secretly incurred the debt was my husband himself, and if anyone is to blame, it's surely him. If he had apologized about the debts, I might have understood. But why the defensive anger? It's none of your business since it's not bothering you. What right do you have, being a woman? Was the debt from before our marriage or after? That's irrelevant. Don't meddle in my private matters. Private matters? That's no excuse. Debt isn't just a personal issue. Since we are married, it becomes my issue too. I haven't told him, but because he had debts, I ended up paying for my mother-in-law's hospital bills. Despite these consequences, why does he act as if he's done nothing wrong? I don't understand why you are angry. Because you keep nagging. When will you understand your place? You're being supported by me, so stop complaining. So, that's what he thinks. But I've completely had enough. The timing is perfect. I've decided to leave him. Being with him won't make me happy, and I refuse to let him ruin my life any further. Yes. Sorry for being dependent. I'll consider my position more carefully from now on. When I said that, my husband seemed somewhat satisfied. However, if he thinks I'm serious, he's greatly mistaken. He'll learn his lesson soon enough, he better be prepared. With that mindset, I immediately went to a certain place. I'd like a high-rise apartment in this area, please. It's quite a budget. Are you sure? Yes, it's fine. I had gone to a real estate agent. I wanted to separate from my husband as soon as possible. I thought the best way to do that was to move out of the house that was in his name. I also wanted to get back at my husband, who completely looked down on me. Soon after, I moved into an apartment in a prime location, taking advantage of the moment my husband was at work to complete the move. That night. Hello? Where are you at this time? Why haven't you done any housework or cooking? I received an angry call from my husband, who knew nothing. Of course, I hadn't told him anything, so I figured he would be quite angry. But I had expected as much. I will be living alone from now on. I've left the divorce papers on the table, so please check them. What? What are you talking about? Stop joking around. I'm not joking around, but I guess you haven't noticed that my stuff is gone. And I don't understand why you are angry. If you want me to come back, shouldn't you be apologizing and asking nicely? Well, I guess it's pointless to expect normal behavior from such a person. Anyway, I've decided to talk to my husband without getting irritated. I think you know this, but I have no intention of living with you anymore. Can you stop causing me trouble? I can't stand living with you anymore. You're irresponsible with money, and you can't build a proper marital relationship with such a selfish person. You being a woman doesn't give you the right to decide that on your own. Who do you think you are? Who do I think I am? That's my line. I don't know when my husband started thinking he was above me. But it's about time he understands his position. First of all, I also contribute to the living expenses, so how are you in a higher position than me? I've always wondered, when did you become so important? I'm the man, so of course I'm important. What are you talking about now? I can't continue a marriage with someone who holds such outdated views, and I want a divorce. I don't think there's anything wrong with what I'm saying, do you? All right, fine. If you say so, I'll give you a divorce. I don't care about your designer job or whatever, you don't even make that much money. You'll regret this later, just so you know. My husband hung up the phone with those last words. But he will be the one to regret it later, not me. He doesn't know how much I earn or that I've been paying for his mother's hospital bills up until now. Well, even if he proposes getting back together, my feelings won't change. A week went by without any contact from my husband, and then one day. Hello. I need to talk, come home. What? I have nothing to talk about with you and I don't want to come. If you have something to say, can't you just call? It's important. What do you mean you've been paying for my mom's hospital bills? And you haven't paid this month's, that's just irresponsible. Irresponsible. Let me say this, I'm divorced now and I have no relation to my ex-husband. Why should I still be responsible for his mother's care? Well, I have the financial means, and since my former in-laws have been quite helpful to me, I could afford the hospital fees, but after talking to my former father-in-law, I decided to fully withdraw and make my ex-husband understand his position instead of letting things slide. But my ex-husband probably doesn't know that, and it's odd he's calling me in anger. He's not in a position to be angry. First of all, where is the gratitude for the hospital fees I've been paying? It's astonishing that he can't even express a bit of gratitude. He probably doesn't have the capacity to be thankful at all. It's always expected that others will do for him, and if something doesn't go his way, he gets angry. A typical useless man. Irresponsible? Aren't you her son? Then, isn't it your responsibility to figure out the hospital bills? Don't try to shift that responsibility onto someone else. What are you talking about? That's your job. What? I helped out because I knew about your debt situation, and you're not even grateful? When your father asked me to help with the hospital bills, you refused because of your debts, right? Then, how do you think your mother has been able to stay in the hospital until now? At that moment, my ex-husband fell silent. He must be aware that what he's saying is wrong. But he stays silent and doesn't apologize. I had no expectations of my ex-husband anymore and had no intention of forgiving his past actions, but I was disappointed until the very end. Even so, it's ridiculous to suddenly stop paying the hospital bills. It's a basic human thing to do. Then let me say this, isn't it a basic thing to consider your wife and act accordingly? What are you talking about when you've just been selfish? That's not what I'm talking about right now. And why are you contacting me now, anyway? Are you begging your divorced wife to pay for your mother's hospital bills? I have no choice but to ask you. Do you intend to just leave my mom like this? Judging by his reaction, it seems my ex-husband wasn't informed, but my former mother-in-law is already scheduled to be discharged. So, there's no longer a problem with hospital fees. But his unawareness and the way he's handling this situation are too much. Has he forgotten how to properly ask for help? You insulted me, calling me just a designer with no earnings. And now you're pleading for help from me? Yes. How much were you earning anyway? Hospital fees are expensive. Where did you get that kind of money? Do you know about the Sky Apartment in New York City? It's a 30-story building. I'm living there now. The Sky Apartment is one of the famous high-rise apartments in New York City. He probably never imagined that I would be living in such a place. My husband was speechless for a while, maybe starting to regret the divorce. Well, I thought he wouldn't show it because he married me not for money and he tends to be domineering. What, so you were the one supporting my mom, huh? I really have nothing but gratitude for you, Michelle. What? What's going on? My former husband, who always looked down on others. Honestly, this change is making me feel sick. I didn't expect such a complete turnaround. Doesn't he have any pride? He used to talk about how the money he earned was his, but the moment he finds out I earn several times more, he changes his tune. With such a personality, I wished he would have kept his pride till the end, but I'm disappointed. I didn't expect you to be so grateful, so thank you. But no matter how much gratitude you show, I won't live with you again. Don't say that, please. If there's anything you're unhappy with, I'll apologize and change. Besides, if you pay off the debt, everything will be resolved. Let's live together as a family again. I wish he wouldn't joke about such things. The idea of me taking on his debt is out of the question, and it irritates me when he says things that are so convenient for him. From what position is he speaking? I wish he would stop, and I'm reaching my limit of patience. He should really stop taking people for granted. If you keep joking around, I'm going to lose my temper, you know? And I think your parents will tell you the details about the money. There's nothing more for me to say, so goodbye. I said that and hung up the phone. He might come to my high-rise apartment wanting to reconcile. But even if he does, the security is tight, so he won't be able to see me. If he lies in wait outside my apartment, I'll report him to the police for stalking, and I have my plans set. Also, my former in-laws have told me they are completely on my side, so I blocked my ex-husband's contact and tried to forget everything. A month later, while I was working at home as usual, my former father-in-law contacted me. Hello? I'm sorry to contact you suddenly. Do you have time now? Yes, I'm available. What's happened? When we divorced, my former father-in-law said he would contact me once everything was settled, but I never thought it would be resolved so quickly. Regardless of the outcome, I was satisfied just to have divorced, and I was going to listen to the aftermath as just a formality. I've decided to cut ties with that fool. What? You're disowning him. Of course. A person who can't think of others at all isn't family. And I've decided not to leave him any inheritance. My former in-laws were on my side, but I knew that he was their only son. So, I was a bit surprised they would make such a drastic decision. The inheritance must refer to the house. My former in-laws didn't have cash, but they had told me the house was quite valuable. They had also told me that when they sold the family home, they would settle everything, including the money I lent for the hospital fees. But, not leaving him any inheritance? Rather than not leaving anything, it might be more accurate to say we're not keeping anything. We're actually thinking of moving into a nursing home. What? A nursing home? My body is starting to feel its age. I think it would be better for us to live in a nursing home. Besides, if we sell the house, we can afford to go into a pretty nice one, and then we plan to live a comfortable life in our later years. I see. They're considering a nursing home. If they have decided that for themselves, then that's fine, but until now, they probably thought they would leave the family home as an inheritance for my ex-husband. My ex-husband trampled on all those feelings. Thinking about the in-laws makes me feel really disappointed, but personally, I think cutting ties with such an ex-husband was the right decision. Given his personality, he might have made financial demands in the future, and I could have been even more disappointed. Considering that, the in-laws' decision seems right. Even though I divorced him, I received a lot of help from my former in-laws. So, I think it would be nice to visit them at the nursing home whenever I have time. And about the money you lent us for the hospital fees, we'd like to pay it back. Can you please accept it? That's okay, you don't have to worry about that. No, we can't do that, it's money that has nothing to do with you. You and Mom have always been so kind to me. That's enough for me. Please keep it as a token of my gratitude, and use it for your future life. I'd be happy if it can help you. Until the end, my former in-laws remained very polite, and their attitude of not taking things for granted warmed my heart. How could such good people have a son like my ex-husband? That alone has always puzzled me, but in the end, my former in-laws thanked me, and it was decided that the hospital fees would be left as they were. A year has passed, and I have established a design company. Currently, I employ 4 designers and, although every day is busy, I am enjoying my life. The company isn't stable yet, and I work every day, but compared to the days I spent with my ex-husband, my life is truly enjoyable and feels fulfilling. My ex-husband tried to remarry after our divorce and asked his friends to introduce him to women, but because of the story of our divorce, no one was willing to match him with anyone. I am leading a happy life since the divorce, while my ex-husband seems to be living miserably. He is merely reaping what he sowed, and I don't feel sorry for him. Why he ended up being disowned by his own parents, divorced by me, and ultimately losing his friends. He needs to think carefully about his actions and reflect if he ever wants to lead a decent life. Well, whatever my ex-husband does or whatever life he leads doesn't concern me anymore. I have my own life to live, and I plan to continue working hard to ensure my life isn't ruined.